I live with the man who abandoned me when I was dying of cancer, and I am the one who keeps him alive. Yes, you heard that right. The same man who walked out of my hospital room 25 years ago, calling me useless, now depends on me for every breath, every meal, every trip to dialysis. People in Detroit thought I was crazy when they heard this true story of the old woman who took in her ex-husband. They whispered, "Why would she save the man who destroyed her?" But here's what they don't understand. Sometimes, the greatest revenge isn't letting someone die, but letting them live long enough to truly understand what they've done. What I discovered will shock you even more than my decision to become his caregiver. If you're listening from anywhere in the world, leave a comment and subscribe because there are truths that need to be shared, no matter how much they shake your faith. There are stories, no matter how painful, that must be told. I wake up every morning at 5 a.m. to prepare medications for the man who once told me I was too broken to love. The same hands that once begged him to stay as cancer ravaged my body now steady his trembling fingers as kidney failure destroys his. You're probably thinking I'm either a saint or completely insane. The truth? I'm neither. What I discovered about revenge, forgiveness, and the twisted ways life teaches us lessons will shock you more than my decision to become his caregiver. This is my story from Detroit, and if you're listening from anywhere in the world, buckle up, because some truths cut so deep they reshape your entire understanding of justice. You see, I spent 15 years rebuilding myself from the ashes of his abandonment. 15 years of proving that the useless woman he left behind could build an empire with her bare hands. And now I hold his life in these same hands he once pushed away. Every morning when I help him with his dialysis machine, I see the recognition in his eyes, the dawning horror of understanding exactly what kind of woman he discarded. That look? That's worth more than any revenge I could have ever planned. Because there was something Michael never knew, something I discovered only years later that would have changed everything. A medical secret that proved everything he believed about our marriage, about me, about his own manhood was a lie. But I'm getting ahead of myself. That revelation comes later, and when it does, you'll understand why some forms of justice are more beautiful than anything Hollywood could ever write. After sharing my life with a man for over a decade, when my body was screaming for help and my soul was crumbling in a hospital, he simply vanished like smoke. But if you could have seen the look on his face over 2 decades later when he showed up at my door, trembling, needing the exact same thing from me that I had needed from him. People in Detroit thought I was crazy when they heard this true story of the old woman who took in her ex-husband. They whispered, "Why would she save the man who destroyed her?" If you're listening from anywhere in the world, leave a comment and subscribe, because there are truths that need to be shared, no matter how much they shake your faith. There are stories, no matter how painful, that must be told. This story doesn't start with the abandonment, my dears. It starts much earlier, when I was an innocent young woman who believed in fairy tales and thought that love could conquer all. I was 21 when I met Michael Miller in 1974. I was working as a waitress at a diner called the Detroit Diner in downtown Detroit, near Campus Martius. It was a very different time, when women like me didn't have many options other than getting married young and starting a family. Michael was 25 and worked as a city bus driver on the line that went down Woodward Avenue. He was a handsome man, with a light tan, a well-kept mustache, and these brown eyes that I fell for from the first day he walked into the diner. He always came in on Tuesdays and Thursdays around 3 in the afternoon when his morning shift ended. He'd order the daily special, chicken noodle soup, the main course of the day, and an iced tea. I remember perfectly the first time he spoke to me about something other than the menu. It was a Thursday in February 1974. It was terribly cold, and he came in blowing on his hands. "Miss," he said in that husky voice of his, "don't you have something warm to chase this chill from my soul?" I laughed because I thought the way he said it was funny, and I served him a drip coffee with cinnamon that smelled glorious. "Now this is good," he said after trying it, "but not as good as your smile." At that time, I lived with my parents in an apartment building in Corktown. My dad, George Murphy, worked as a construction worker on different sites all over the city, and my mom, Ruth, took in sewing work at home to make ends meet. We were 5 siblings. I was the eldest. After me came Catherine, Robert, Hope, and the youngest, Thomas. Our apartment had 2 bedrooms and a small patio where my mom did laundry and kept a few chickens. Life wasn't easy, but it wasn't sad either. On Sundays, we went to Mass at St. Joseph's Church and then to the Eastern Market to buy groceries for the week. My dad sometimes had to work on Sundays too, but when he didn't, he would take us to Belle Isle Park or downtown for a walk. My mom always told us, "Girls, get an education so you don't have to depend on any man like I depend on your father." But I was young and romantic. And when Michael started coming to sing for me on the porch on Sunday afternoons, all the neighbors would come to their windows to listen. He had a nice voice and knew how to play the guitar. He would sing me Your Song by Elton John, Can't Help Myself by the Four Tops, and Let's Stay Together by Al Green. Mrs. Peterson, the woman who lived in the apartment next door, always told me, "Oh, Kira, you're so lucky to have such a handsome and hard-working young man." At first, my dad didn't approve of Michael visiting me. "That boy drives a bus," he'd say. "Those guys sometimes get into trouble." But my mom convinced him that Michael seemed like a decent, hard-working man who also treated me with respect. Besides, George, Kira is already 21. If she doesn't get married soon, she'll miss her chance. The courtship lasted 8 months. Michael would visit me on Wednesdays and Sundays, always well-dressed, with his shirt ironed and his shoes shined. On Wednesdays, we would chat on the patio of the apartment building under my mom's supervision, who always found something to do near where we were sitting. On Sundays, we went to the park, accompanied by my sister Catherine, who acted as a chaperone. He proposed to me on a Sunday in October, 1974, in Belle Isle Park. We had gone for a walk after eating some corn on the cob near the river, and suddenly he knelt on the grass. He pulled out a small red velvet box with a simple yellow gold ring with a little stone that sparkled in the sun. "Kira Murphy," he said with a trembling voice, "would you do me the honor of being my wife?" I started crying with emotion, and Catherine screamed so loudly that everyone nearby turned to look at us. "Yes, yes, yes," I answered, and he put the ring on my finger. It was the first time I had my own piece of jewelry, and I just stared at how the little stones sparkled, thinking I was the luckiest woman in the world. The wedding was on the 18th of February, 1975 at St. Joseph's Church. It was a simple ceremony because neither of our families had much money, but it was beautiful. My dress was white satin that we had bought at a department store downtown, and my mom lent me her veil, which she had worn at her own wedding. Michael looked so handsome in his navy blue suit that he had rented from a shop downtown. After the ceremony, we had a small party on the patio of our apartment building. My dad hired a small local band with a guitar, bass, and drums. We ate pot roast that my mom and the neighbors made, mashed potatoes, green bean casserole, and dinner rolls. For drinks, we had lemonade, sweet tea, and Budweiser for the men. The band played Love Train by the OJs, Dancing Queen by ABBA, and Signed, Sealed, Delivered I'm Yours by Stevie Wonder. Michael asked me to dance, and I felt like a princess with my white dress swirling on the concrete patio. All the neighbors peeked out from their windows and doors to watch us, and the women would shout, "Long live the newlyweds," every time we kissed. For our honeymoon, we went to Traverse City on a bus and stayed for 2 nights in a little hotel near downtown. It was the first time I had ever left Detroit, and everything seemed wonderful to me. The warmer weather, the prettier flowers, the more relaxed people. Michael took me to see Sleeping Bear Dunes and the local wineries, and we ate at a restaurant with a view of the bay. When we returned from our honeymoon, we moved into a small 2-bedroom house that Michael had rented in Dearborn. It was small but nice, with tile floors, light blue painted walls, and a small yard where I could hang the laundry. The master bedroom had a queen-sized bed that we had bought on installment, a wooden wardrobe, and a dresser with a mirror. We used the second room as a living room with a love seat, a coffee table, and a black and white television. The first 2 years of marriage were very happy. Michael was a loving and responsible husband. He would get home from work around 6 in the evening. We would have dinner together watching the news and then sit on the patio to chat while I mended his work clothes. On weekends, we would go to the Saturday flea market, to our family's houses on Sundays, and sometimes to the movies to see Clint Eastwood or Burt Reynolds films. I quit my job at the diner when I got married, as was the custom at the time. My job now was to take care of the house, cook for Michael, and wait for the babies to arrive, because that was the plan, right? Get married, have children, raise a family. Michael always talked about the children we were going to have. When we have the first baby, he'd say, "We're going to need a bigger house," or, "When our son is born, I'm going to teach him how to drive a bus like me." But the months passed, and the pregnancy didn't come. At first, we weren't worried because my mom always said that God gives children when the time is right. But after a year of marriage, when all the neighbors were already asking me when I was going to have good news, I started to feel terrible pressure. "Have you been to the doctor?" Mrs. Carter, the lady from the house next door, would ask me. It took my Lisa 2 years, but then she had 5 in a row. Michael also started making comments, at first jokingly. "Let's see when you give us an heir, woman," but then with more insistence. Could it be that something is wrong? My sister Lisa got pregnant 3 months after she got married. By 1977, when we had been married for 2 years and I still hadn't gotten pregnant, we decided to go to the doctor. We went to the local health clinic, where a young doctor asked us several very personal questions that made me very embarrassed. He ordered tests for both of us, blood tests, urine tests, and others that I didn't quite understand what they were for. 2 weeks later, we went back for the results. The doctor called us into his office, a small room that smelled of disinfectant and had green walls that made me nervous. "Mr. and Mrs. Miller," he said, looking at some papers. "The tests show that you, ma'am, have some complications that make pregnancy very difficult. Not impossible, but very difficult." I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. "What does that mean, doctor?" Michael asked. "It means you can keep trying, but the chances of pregnancy are very low. There are treatments, but they are expensive and not guaranteed." The doctor continued talking about hormones, treatments, percentages, but I wasn't listening anymore. I was only thinking that I was defective, that I couldn't fulfill the most basic function of a woman. We left the office in silence. Michael drove home without saying a word, and I spent the whole ride looking out the window, feeling empty inside. That night, when we were in bed, he said to me, "Don't worry, Kira. We'll keep trying." Besides, the doctor said it was difficult, not impossible. But I knew something had changed between us. In Michael's eyes, there was a disappointment he tried to hide, and in my heart, there was a guilt that was eating me up inside. It was 1977, and at that time, a woman who couldn't have children was seen as incomplete, as if she were missing something essential. The next 3 years were an emotional roller coaster. Every month, I anxiously awaited my period, praying it wouldn't come. When it arrived on time, as always, I would lock myself in the bathroom to cry in silence so Michael wouldn't see me. He stopped making comments about babies, but I noticed how his face lit up when he saw children on the street, or how he would fall silent when our friends and family announced pregnancies. In 1980, when we had been married for 5 years, we went to a fertility specialist at Henry Ford Hospital. It cost us a lot of money that we had to borrow, but we were desperate. This doctor performed more complex, more invasive, more painful tests on us. I underwent some procedures that left me bleeding and sore for days. The results were definitive. My fallopian tubes were blocked due to an infection I had as a child that was never treated properly. The probability of a natural pregnancy is less than 5%, the doctor told us. There are experimental surgeries, but they are very risky and not covered by insurance. That night, Michael got drunk for the first time since I'd known him. He drank half a bottle of whiskey sitting at the kitchen table, and when I tried to console him, he yelled, "Don't touch me! I married you to have a family, not to be a babysitter for a useless woman." His words hurt me more than all the medical procedures combined. The next day, he apologized, saying it was the alcohol, that he was frustrated, but that it wasn't my fault. But the damage was already done. For the first time in our marriage, Michael had yelled at me, called me useless, and I had seen the resentment he had been holding in. From that moment on, Our relationship began to slowly deteriorate. Michael became more distant, colder. He no longer sang to me, we no longer chatted on the patio, we no longer went to the movies on weekends. He went out more often with his friends from work, and I stayed home alone, sewing to earn some money and filling the emptiness I felt in my chest. By 1985, when we celebrated 10 years of marriage, Michael was practically living his life separately from me. He only came home to sleep and eat, and often not even that. On weekends, he would disappear with the excuse that he had to work extra, but I knew it wasn't true because his boss had told me there was no service on Sundays. It was during that time that I started hearing rumors in the neighborhood. Your husband is getting very close with that Jennifer, Mrs. Rose, a gossipy neighbor, came to tell me. They were seen getting very cozy at the tavern on the corner. I tried to ignore it, but the seed of doubt was already planted. Jennifer Davis worked at the bus depot where Michael had his route. She was a 28-year-old woman, blonde, with green eyes, and most importantly, she already had 2 children from her first marriage, which had ended when her husband went to another state for work and never came back. She was exactly everything I wasn't to a woman who had proven she could have babies. One afternoon in November 1985, I found the proof that confirmed my suspicions. While checking the pockets of Michael's shirt before washing it, I found a folded piece of paper with handwriting I didn't recognize. My love, I can't wait for us to be together forever. The kids already love you so much. I love you, Jen. My beautiful souls. Let me tell you something about betrayal. It doesn't just break your heart. It shatters your entire understanding of who you thought you were. In that moment, holding that letter, I wasn't just reading about his affair. I was reading my death certificate as a woman. Because how do you come back from discovering that your husband found someone who could give him the one thing you never could? My heart sped up so much I thought I was going to have a heart attack. My hands trembled as I reread the note over and over, as if the words would magically change. The kids already love you so much. That meant Michael had already met Jennifer's children, that he was already becoming the father he could never be with me. That night, when Michael came home, I was waiting for him at the kitchen table with the note in my hand. "What is this?" I asked, showing him the note. His face changed completely, like a child caught misbehaving. First, he turned red, then pale, and finally, he answered with an aggression I had never seen in him before. "It's exactly what it looks like," he said without any remorse. "Jennifer is a complete woman, a woman who can give me what you will never give me." His words were like slaps in the face. "Are you telling me you're cheating on me?" I asked, although the answer was obvious. "It's not cheating when my own wife can't fulfill her duties as a woman," he replied. "Jennifer has already proven that I can have children with her. She's pregnant, Kira. She's going to have my child, something you will never be able to do. Sisters, there are wounds that cut so deep they reshape your DNA. When the man who promised to love you in sickness and in health walks away because you're fighting for your life, you discover something terrifying. You are stronger than you ever imagined you'd need to be." That night, I didn't just lose a husband. I gave birth to a woman who would never again mistake someone else's cowardice for her own worth. I felt as if the world was collapsing on me. Not only was he cheating on me, but he had gotten another woman pregnant. That night I cried like I had never cried in my life while Michael packed some things in a suitcase. "I'm going to my sister's house for a few days," he said. "I need to think about what we're going to do about this." The few days turned into a week, then a month, and then a way of life. Michael only returned to the house when he needed clean clothes or wanted to sleep in a comfortable bed. The rest of the time he spent with Jennifer and her children, playing at being the family he couldn't form with me. In March 1986, Jennifer gave birth to a boy whom Michael registered as his own. His name was Michael Jr. And when I saw him for the first time, held in his father's arms at the hospital, I felt a pang of pain so sharp that I had to run to the bathroom to vomit. That baby was living proof that the problem wasn't Michael but me. Right now, Kira thinks she's the one to blame, but the truth will be completely different. What she doesn't know about Michael will be revealed later. "He looks just like me when I was a baby," Michael said with a smile I hadn't seen in years. "You see, I could have children. The problem was never me. His words were cruel and unnecessary, but he seemed to enjoy my pain. It was as if he had finally found a way to make me pay for being infertile. From that moment on, Michael no longer bothered to hide his relationship with Jennifer. On weekends, he would take her and her 3 children, her 2 and the baby, on outings all over the city. He took them to the Detroit Zoo, to the Riverwalk, to the fairs that were set up in different neighborhoods. He was the loving and present father he had dreamed of being with me, but never could. What hurt most wasn't jealousy. I had moved beyond that. It was the realization that Michael had become the father and husband he'd always been capable of being, just not with me. He was present for birthday parties, school events, and family dinners. All the things he'd claimed were impossible during our marriage suddenly became natural with Jennifer's family. It was as if our 11 years together had been practice for his real life with someone else. I stayed home on weekends, sewing for different ladies in the neighborhood who commissioned me for alterations or new clothes. It was my way of earning some money and keeping my mind busy so I wouldn't go crazy thinking about the parallel life my husband was leading with another woman. I also started going to church more often, praying to God to explain why he was punishing me in this way. Father Martin, the priest at St. Anime, Joseph's parish, advised patience and resignation. "The Lord's ways are mysterious, my child," he would say. "Perhaps God has other plans for you that do not include motherhood. Pray for your husband, that he may return to the right path." But I no longer knew if I wanted him to come back, because when he was at home, the atmosphere was so tense that it was worse than being alone. By mid-1986, Michael had practically moved in with Jennifer. He only returned to our house once or twice a week, and when he did, it was as if he were an annoying guest. Jennifer by then was pregnant again. It was going to be a girl, and Michael was thrilled. "She's going to be my little princess," he told anyone who would listen. "I already have a prince, and now I'm going to have a princess." I found out about these details through the comments of the neighbors, who pitied me but also enjoyed the gossip. It was during that time that I started working outside the home again. I got a job as a receptionist at a dental clinic in Midtown Detroit. The job didn't pay much, but it gave me the financial independence I needed and got me out of the house where I just stewed in my misery. Besides, being busy helped me not to think so much about my situation. At the clinic, I met other women who also had marital problems. There was Hope, a 45-year-old woman whose husband had left her for a 25-year-old girl, Melanie, who had divorced after discovering her husband had another family in Grand Rapids, and Rose, who had decided to stay single after 2 failed marriages. With them, I learned that my situation was not unique, that many women went through similar betrayals, and that there was life after abandonment. "The problem, Kira," Melanie told me, "is that they taught us to depend on men for happiness. But happiness comes from within, not from without." Near the end of the year, Jennifer gave birth to the girl, who was named Jessica. Michael was so excited that he even invited his family to meet his princess. Lisa, his sister, came to tell me everything in great detail, as if it were a soap opera. "The baby is gorgeous," she said, "looks just like Michael, and Jennifer looks very happy, very fulfilled." Every detail Lisa told me was painful, but I was beginning to understand that Michael had built the life he wanted, and I was no longer part of that equation. The situation had become unbearable. One night, after 3 weeks of not seeing Michael, I decided to go look for him at Jennifer's house. I knew the address because Lisa had given it to me unintentionally in a conversation. It was a small but well-kept house in a working-class neighborhood, with a small garden in front and new curtains in the windows. I rang the doorbell at 8 in the evening, when I knew they would have already had dinner. Jennifer opened the door holding the baby, Jessica. She was prettier than I had imagined, tall, blonde, with curly hair and a perfect smile. When she saw me, her face changed completely. "Are you Kira?" she asked, although she obviously already knew who I was. "Yes," I replied. "I'm Michael's wife. I need to talk to him." From inside the house, I heard Michael's voice asking who it was, and then his footsteps approaching the door. When he saw me, his face was pure anger. "What are you doing here, Kira? You have no right to come and bother my family." "Your family?" I replied. "I am your family, Michael. We've been married for 11 years, or have you forgotten?" "You are not my family," he said with a coldness that chilled my blood. "You are just a mistake from the past. My real family is here, with my children and the woman who can actually give me what I need." Jennifer, standing behind him, smiled with a satisfaction that made me nauseous. "I want a divorce," I said, surprising myself with my determination. "Perfect," he replied. "It's about time you realized this has no future." That night I returned home knowing that my marriage was officially over, but feeling strangely liberated. The divorce proceedings were complicated by Michigan's laws at the time. Since I had no children and limited assets, the process moved relatively quickly. Michael didn't contest anything. He seemed eager to formalize his new life with Jennifer. Our lawyer, Mr. Davidson, was sympathetic but practical. "You're young, Mrs. Miller," he told me. "You have your whole life ahead of you." I wasn't sure if I believed him then, but his words would prove prophetic. The divorce was finalized in December 1986. The first few years after the divorce were very difficult, but also very liberating. For the first time in my adult life, I could make decisions without consulting anyone. I moved to a smaller apartment in Hamtramck because the house where I had lived with Michael was too expensive for my clinic salary. It was a one-room apartment with an integrated kitchen, but it was mine. I decorated it to my own taste, with yellow curtains, plants in clay pots, and pictures of my family instead of wedding photos that only brought back bitter memories. At the dental clinic, my coworkers became my new family, but it was Melanie who became my anchor. This fierce woman, who had survived her own devastating divorce, looked me in the eye one Sunday morning and said something that would become my mantra. "Kira, your broken isn't broken enough to stop you from flying. Watch me teach you how to soar." She didn't just offer friendship, she offered proof that women could not just survive abandonment, we could transform it into rocket fuel for an extraordinary life. Melanie, Rose, and Hope adopted me as their younger sister and taught me everything I needed to know to be an independent woman. They took me to open my first personal bank account. They taught me how to drive, something Michael had never allowed me to do, and they accompanied me to buy my first pieces of furniture. "Independence is scary at first," Rose would tell me, "but then it becomes addictive. Once you get used to not depending on anyone, you don't want to go back to being a man's shadow." And she was right. Every day that passed, I felt stronger, more confident, more complete as an individual. In 1988, when I was 35, I decided to study computer skills at a night school for adults. I wanted to grow professionally and not depend on receptionist jobs my whole life. The classes were from Monday to Friday, from 6 to 8 in the evening, after my work at the clinic. It was tiring, but I was excited to learn something new. At first, I had a lot of trouble understanding computers. It was a completely new technology for me, and the other students, who were younger, seemed to understand everything faster. But I was persistent, and little by little, I mastered the basic programs: Word, Excel, and even some computerized accounting. The teacher, Mr. Gonzalez, was a man in his 50s who had a lot of patience with the older students. "Mrs. Murphy," he would say, "you have a lot of determination. That's worth more than youth for learning." His words gave me the confidence to keep going when I got frustrated because I didn't understand something. In 1989, thanks to my new computer skills, I got a better job as an accounting assistant at a small electrical supply company. The salary was almost double what I earned at the clinic, and the work environment was very professional. For the first time in my life, I felt like a career woman, not just a failed wife. It was at that job that I met my boss, Mr. Morales, a 45-year-old widower who treated me with a professional respect I had never experienced before. He didn't see me as the infertile woman or the abandoned wife, but as Kira the accountant, a capable and intelligent woman. One day, after I had been working there for 6 months, Mr. Morales invited me to lunch to talk about a special project. We went to a restaurant near the office, and during the meal, he offered me the opportunity to manage the company's entire accounting with a considerable salary increase. "You are very responsible and very dedicated," he said. "You also have a maturity that I don't find in younger accountants. I think you can handle this responsibility perfectly." I accepted immediately, thrilled that someone recognized my professional value. In the following months, Mr. Morales and I developed a good working friendship. He respected my opinions, consulted me on important decisions, and treated me as a colleague rather than a subordinate. It was the first time a man had made me feel intelligent and important. One afternoon in December of that year, after we finished the year-end accounting closing, Mr. Morales invited me to dinner to celebrate. "You have been fundamental to the company's growth this year," he said. "I think you deserve a good dinner." We went to an elegant restaurant in a fancy part of town with white tablecloths, crystal glasses, and uniformed waiters. I had never been to such a fine place. During dinner, Mr. Morales told me about his life. His wife had died of cancer 3 years earlier. He had a 20-year-old daughter who was studying medicine, and he had dedicated himself completely to work to avoid thinking about his loneliness. "And you, Kira," he asked me, "what are your plans for the future?" It was the first time in years that someone had asked about my dreams, not my tragedies. I told him I wanted to continue studying, maybe finish a technical degree in accounting, and one day have my own accounting services office. "Those are very sensible plans," he said. "An intelligent woman like you can achieve whatever she sets her mind to." His words filled me with a confidence I had never felt before. At the end of the dinner, he took me home like a true gentleman, without trying anything inappropriate. That night, I stayed awake, thinking about how different Mr. Morales was from Michael. While Michael had always made me feel defective and incomplete, Mr. Morales made me feel valuable and intelligent. There was no romance between us, but there was mutual respect and professional admiration. During 1990, our friendship deepened. Mr. Morales would occasionally invite me to lunch to discuss work projects, and sometimes we went to the movies on Friday nights. It was a platonic relationship based on companionship and respect, very different from anything I had known before. One day, while we were reviewing some financial statements, Mr. Morales asked me why I hadn't remarried. "A woman like you, intelligent, hardworking, beautiful, should have suitors lining up," he said. I briefly told him about my failed marriage, without going into painful details. "Your ex-husband didn't know how to value what he had," he said. "But that doesn't mean all men are the same. Someday, someone will come along who sees you for who you are, an extraordinary woman." His words moved me so much that my eyes filled with tears. However, I wasn't looking for another marriage. My independence had become very valuable to me, and I didn't want to risk it for a man, no matter how good he was. I explained to Mr. Morales that I had decided to focus on my professional and personal growth, at least for the time being. "I respect you very much for that decision," he said. "I believe a person must be whole with themselves before sharing their life with someone else. You are building something beautiful, your own identity, your own career, your own happiness." At the end of 1990, I received news of Michael through Lisa, his sister. She told me that he and Jennifer had finally married and that they now had 3 children, Michael Jr., age 4, Jessica, age 4, and a baby born in August named Daniel. She also told me they had bought a house in Warren with an FHA loan. "It seems he's doing well," Lisa commented, as if expecting some reaction of jealousy or sadness from me. But to my surprise, I felt none of that. I just thought, good for him, he finally has what he always wanted. It was as if I were hearing news about a stranger, not someone who had been my husband for 11 years. That indifference confirmed that I had completely healed from the wound Michael had caused me. It no longer hurt to think of him with another woman. I no longer felt inferior for not having been able to give him children. I had found my own worth in other aspects of life, and that had freed me from resentment. The following years were of constant growth and personal satisfaction. I took more courses in tax accounting and became a certified expert accountant. My specialized knowledge allowed me to get an even better job at an accounting consulting firm where I helped small businesses organize their finances. My social life had also become much richer. In addition to my friends from the dental clinic, I had met other women in my computer and accounting classes. We formed a group that met on Sundays for breakfast and conversation. Some were single, others divorced, others widowed, but we all shared the experience of being independent women. In 1993, at the age of 40, I decided to fulfill a dream I had since I was young, to learn to drive perfectly and buy my own car. I had learned the basics years before with my friends, but I wanted more confidence. I enrolled in a formal driving school and practiced until I could drive in Detroit's traffic without fear. My first car was a used blue 1989 Ford Escort that I bought with my savings after months of research. The day I drove it off the lot, driving it myself, I felt an incredible freedom. I could go wherever I wanted, whenever I wanted, without depending on buses or taxis. With my car, my independence multiplied. On weekends, I explored different parts of the city I had never known. I went to Ann Arbor to walk its charming streets, to the Detroit Riverwalk to eat at the restaurants along the water, to Royal Oak to visit its boutique shops. Michigan was much bigger and more beautiful than what I had known during my marriage. In 1994, Mr. Morales offered to make me a junior partner in his consulting firm. "You already handle more than half of the clients," he said, "and they all respect you very much. I think it's fair that you become a partial owner of the business you've helped build." I accepted the proposal and became the owner of 25% of the company. It was the first time in my life I owned something truly valuable. With my share of the profits, my income increased considerably, and I was able to move from my small apartment in Hamtramck to a larger, more elegant apartment in Grosse Pointe. The move represented more than just a change of address. It was a symbol of how far I had come from the broken woman who had left her marriage 8 years earlier. My new apartment had 2 bedrooms, a living room, a dining room, a full kitchen, and even a small study where I could work from home when necessary. I decorated it completely to my taste, with warm-toned walls, comfortable yet elegant furniture, and many plants that brought life to every space. I turned the second bedroom into my personal office with a wooden desk, my own computer, and file cabinets where I kept my certificates, diplomas, and the awards I had received at work. It was my professional sanctuary, the tangible symbol of everything I had achieved on my own. In 1995, when I was 42, I received a completely unexpected proposal. Robert Sullivan, a 50-year-old independent public accountant I knew through work, invited me to dinner and then proposed that we become partners in our own accounting firm. "You have an excellent reputation among clients," he said, "and I have experience with large corporations. Together, we could handle everything from small to medium-sized businesses and have a very prosperous business." The idea thrilled me, but I was also afraid of leaving the security of my current job. For several weeks, I carefully analyzed the proposal. I crunched the numbers, researched the market, and consulted with my friends and Mr. Morales. Everyone advised me to take the opportunity. "Kira," Melanie said, "you're 42 and have more experience than many accountants with a degree. It's your time to fly solo." In January 1996, I resigned from my job at the consulting firm and opened my own accounting office in partnership with Robert. We rented a 3-office space in a building in Midtown. We bought modern computer equipment and designed a marketing strategy to attract clients. The first few months were difficult because we had few clients and many expenses. But little by little, thanks to my reputation and Robert's contacts, the business began to grow. By the end of 1996, we had 15 regular clients and had hired a part-time secretary. Having my own business gave me a satisfaction I had never experienced before. Every new client, every problem solved, every well-prepared financial statement was a personal achievement. I was no longer working to please a boss, but to build something of my own, something that would last. In 1997, my firm was prosperous enough for me to afford luxuries that were previously unthinkable. I bought myself a new car, a red 1997 Ford Mustang that I loved. I also started to travel. I went to Chicago, to New Orleans, to Miami, always alone or with my friends, enjoying my total independence. Those trips opened my eyes to a world I didn't know. In Chicago, I fell in love with the architecture. In New Orleans, I discovered Creole culture. In Miami, I enjoyed the sea like never before. Each place taught me something new about America and about myself. By 1998, when I was 45, my life was completely different from what it had been during my marriage. I had my own prosperous business, my own beautiful apartment, my own car, my own savings, and my own decisions. I was an independent, confident, and happy woman with the choices I had made. One day, while organizing some old papers, I found my wedding photos with Michael. I stared at those images of the 21-year-old girl who had been smiling and hopeful, not knowing all that awaited her. I didn't feel sadness, but a kind of tenderness for that young woman who had believed in fairy tales. "Thank you," I said aloud to that photo, "for being strong enough to survive everything that came after. Because without the pain of my failed marriage, without the humiliation of abandonment, without the struggle of the first years of divorce, I would never have discovered what I was truly capable of." That night I put the photos in a box, not to forget the past, but to remember how far I had come since then. I was no longer the dependent and fearful Kira I had been. I was a woman who had built her own life, her own achievements, her own happiness. In January 1999, when I was 46, I started to feel the first symptoms of what would change my life forever. The 23rd of February, 1999. The date is burned into my memory like a brand. 3 words would shatter my world that day. You have cancer. But what came next, my husband's reaction to those words, would destroy something far deeper than any disease ever could. At first, I thought it was stress from work, because we had had a very busy December with the year-end financial closings. My stomach hurt occasionally, I had heartburn after eating, and I felt more tired than usual. The stomach pains I started feeling in January 1999 were initially mild and intermittent. I thought it was gastritis from work stress because January was always a very heavy month at the accounting firm. All the clients wanted their annual returns ready as soon as possible, and we worked very late almost every day. Robert, my partner, suggested I go to the doctor when he saw me taking Tums after every meal. "Kira, you've had that heartburn for 3 weeks. You better get it checked out, just in case it's something more serious," he said. But I'm one of those people who always think symptoms will go away on their own, so I kept taking antacids and trying to eat less spicy food. By February, the pain had intensified. It wasn't just heartburn after eating anymore, but a stabbing pain that would wake me up in the middle of the night. Some nights I had to get up and walk around the apartment because lying down the pain was unbearable. I also noticed that I had lost weight without trying, because my clothes were starting to get loose. My friend Melanie was the one who forced me to go to the doctor. One Saturday, when we were having breakfast together, she saw me turn down the sweet roll I always loved. "Kira, you never turn down the croissants from the bakery. What's wrong?" When I told her about the pains, she got very serious. "You're going to the doctor tomorrow, and don't tell me you don't have time." On Monday, the 8th of February, I went to the Community Health Center in Grosse Pointe. Dr. Hayes, a young but very professional woman, asked me many questions about my symptoms. When they had started, what kind of pain it was, if I had lost weight, if I had nausea. She also asked about my family history of cancer, which made me nervous. "We're going to run some tests," she said after examining my abdomen. "It could be gastritis, it could be an ulcer, but we need to rule out other possibilities." She gave me an order for blood tests, an abdominal ultrasound, and an endoscopy. "It's important that you get all these tests done as soon as possible," she stressed. I did the blood tests that same afternoon at a lab near my house. I scheduled the ultrasound for Thursday and the endoscopy for the following week. While waiting for the results, I tried to keep busy with work, but it was hard to concentrate when the pain was becoming more frequent and more intense. On Thursday, during the ultrasound, I noticed that the technician spent a lot of time on a specific area of my abdomen. He made the same pass over and over, took measurements, and wrote things in his notebook with a very serious expression. When I asked him if he saw anything unusual, he replied, "The doctor will explain everything when he has all the results." The endoscopy was very uncomfortable, but the doctor who performed it, gastroenterologist Dr. Evans, explained the whole procedure as he did it. "I'm going to insert a very small camera through your mouth to look directly at the stomach," he said. "If I see anything abnormal, I'll take a small sample for analysis." During the procedure, I was sedated but conscious and could see on a monitor what the camera was showing. I didn't understand what I was seeing, but I noticed the doctor spent a lot of time in certain areas and took many pictures. I also felt when he took the sample an internal pinch that caused a little bleeding. "We're done," Dr. Evans said after 45 minutes. "We'll send the samples to the pathology lab. The results will be ready in a week. In the meantime, continue with the bland diet and the medications your doctor prescribed." His tone was professional but neutral, giving me no clues about what he had found. That week of waiting was one of the longest of my life. During the day, I tried to work normally, but at night, my mind created worst-case scenarios. What if it was cancer? What if it was incurable? What if I was going to end up like Mr. Morales' wife, who had died after a long agony? My friends tried to reassure me. "It's probably just an ulcer," Rose would say. "With the stress you've been under, it would be normal." Melanie was more practical. "Whatever it is, Kira, you are strong. You've overcome worse things than this." But deep down, I had a very bad feeling. On Tuesday, the 23rd of February, I had an appointment for the results. The night before, I couldn't sleep at all. I spent it watching television, organizing papers I didn't need to organize, and pacing around the apartment like a caged lion. By 6 in the morning, I was already dressed and ready, even though the appointment wasn't until 11. I arrived at Dr. Evans's office half an hour before my appointment. The waiting room was full of people who looked as worried as I did. There were women my age, some older gentlemen, and even a young girl who couldn't have been more than 25. We were all waiting for news that could change our lives forever. When they finally called me into the office, Dr. Evans had my file open on his desk. He wasn't smiling, but he didn't look alarmed either. I sat in front of him, my heart beating so hard I was sure he could hear it. "Mrs. Murphy," he said, using my married name that still appeared on my medical records. "The tests show that you have a malignant tumor in your stomach," he said directly but gently. "It's gastric cancer. And given its size and location, it's in an intermediate stage. Listen to me carefully. My dears, when a doctor tells you that you have cancer, time stops. Everything you thought mattered suddenly becomes meaningless, and everything you took for granted becomes precious beyond measure. But here's what they don't tell you. Cancer doesn't just attack your body. It reveals who the people around you really are. And sometimes, that truth is more devastating than the disease itself." Exactly. Illness shows us who really stands by our side. Kira is about to fight alone, but she'll be stronger than she imagines. His words reached my ears as if spoken from far away, as if I were listening through a long tunnel. "Cancer?" I managed to ask in a voice I didn't recognize as my own. "Yes," he confirmed, "but it's important for you to know that, although it's serious, it is operable, and with the right treatment, you have a very good chance of a full recovery." He began to explain about cancer stages, surgeries, chemotherapy, but I was only hearing scattered words. "Am I going to die?" I asked him directly, because I needed to know the truth. The doctor looked me in the eyes and answered honestly, "If it's not treated, yes. But if we start treatment immediately, you have very good odds of being cured. Gastric cancer, when detected early and treated aggressively, has very high survival rates." He explained that I needed surgery to remove the tumor, followed by chemotherapy to eliminate any cancerous cells that might have remained. "We can schedule the surgery for next week," he said. "It's important not to lose time." He also gave me the name of an oncologist who would help with the complete treatment. I left the office with a folder full of information about stomach cancer, hospital addresses, doctors' names, and appointment dates. But what I carried most was a sense of unreality, as if it were all a very vivid dream from which I would wake up at any moment. I went straight to my apartment and called Robert to tell him I wouldn't be able to come to work for the rest of the week. "Are you okay, Kira? You sound very strange," he said. I told him about the diagnosis, and he was silent for a long time. "Do you need anything?" Do you want me to come over? His genuine concern made me cry for the first time since I had left the doctor's office. Then I called Melanie, Rose, and Hope. They all reacted with shock, but immediately organized to help me. We're coming to your house right now, Melanie said. No one goes through this alone. In an hour, the three of them were in my living room with bags of food, flowers, and a fierce determination to accompany me through the entire process. That afternoon, with my friends by my side, I called my sister Catherine in Ohio to tell her about the diagnosis. She started crying on the phone and told me she would come to Michigan immediately to be with me during the surgery. Don't worry about anything, sis. We're going to get through this. That night, when I was alone, I sat on my bed thinking about everything I had built in recent years. My business, my independence, my apartment, my friends, my new life. Was all of that going to disappear because of cancer? Was I going to die just when I had found happiness? But then I thought about everything I had overcome before. The failed marriage, the abandonment, the humiliation, the years of rebuilding. If I had been able to get through all that, I could also get through cancer. I wasn't going to give up without a fight. I wasn't going to let this disease take away everything I had achieved. The surgery was scheduled for Monday, the 1st of March, at Henry Ford Hospital. The Friday before, Robert closed the office early and took me to handle all the preoperative procedures. More blood tests, an EKG, chest x-rays, and a consultation with the anesthesiologist. The business can wait, he said. The important thing now is for you to get well. On Sunday, Catherine arrived from Ohio with a suitcase full of things she thought I would need. Comfortable pajamas, slippers, books, magazines, and even a rosary blessed by the priest of her parish. So the Virgin Mary will protect you during the operation, she said. Her faith gave me strength, even though I wasn't very religious. The night before the surgery, my friends organized a small gathering at my apartment. It wasn't a farewell, but a celebration in advance of my recovery. When you get out of the hospital, Rose said, we're going to have a big party to celebrate you beating cancer. On Monday, the 1st of March, 1999, I arrived at Henry Ford Hospital at 6 a.m. Catherine accompanied me, along with Melanie and Robert. The surgery waiting room was filled with nervous families, all waiting for news of their loved ones in the operating room. The pre-op preparations were long and exhaustive. They put me in a hospital gown, started an IV line in my arm, and explained the whole procedure they were going to do. The surgeon, Dr. Mendoza, a man of about 55 with very steady hands, calmed me down a lot with his confidence. We're going to remove the tumor and a part of the stomach that is affected, he explained. It's a complex surgery. It will last between 4 and 6 hours, but I have a lot of experience in this type of procedure. Your chances of success are very high. His words gave me peace. Before entering the operating room, I was able to say goodbye to Catherine and my friends. We'll see you when you wake up, Melanie said, kissing my forehead. Everything is ready for you at home for when you get back, Catherine whispered in my ear. Robert just squeezed my hand and said, You are the strongest woman I know. You will get through this. The general anesthesia was like flipping a switch. One moment I was talking to the anesthesiologist about the weather, and the next moment I was waking up in recovery with a terrible feeling throughout my body. I had tubes in my nose, in my mouth, in my arm, and a huge wound on my abdomen that hurt as if I had been split in two. The first face I saw when I fully opened my eyes was Catherine's. She was sitting by my bed, holding my hand with tears in her eyes, but smiling. It's over, sis, she said. The doctor says everything went perfectly. They were able to remove the entire tumor. Dr. Mendoza came about an hour later, when I was more awake. The surgery was a complete success, he said with a satisfied smile. We removed the tumor and all the affected tissue. The margins are clean, which means we got all the cancer. Now comes recovery and then preventive chemotherapy. The following days in the hospital were very tough. The pain was constant. I couldn't eat anything solid, and I had to get up and walk every few hours to avoid complications, even though each step was agony. But Catherine never left my side for a single moment, sleeping in an uncomfortable chair next to my bed. Melanie, Rose, and Hope took turns visiting me every day. They brought me flowers, magazines, and news from the outside world that helped me not to feel so disconnected from my normal life. Robert came in the afternoons to tell me about the office and to assure me that everything was under control. "The clients are asking about you," he would say. "Everyone knows you're sick and they all send their regards and good wishes. Mrs. Martinez, the one from the stationery store, even sent some candles for me to light for your health." Knowing that people cared about me gave me the strength to endure the pain and discomfort. On the 5th day, I was discharged from the hospital. I had to follow a very strict diet, take several medications, and return every 3rd day for a checkup of the wound. But the most important thing was to prepare for chemotherapy, which would start in 2 weeks to ensure that not a single cancer cell remained in my body. Catherine stayed with me for the first 2 weeks in my apartment. She took care of me as if I were a baby. She prepared bland meals for me every few hours, helped me bathe because I couldn't move my abdomen much, and even read to me aloud when I didn't have the energy to hold a book. "Sis," she said one night while giving me my medication, "haven't you thought about calling Michael to tell him you're sick?" Her question surprised me. I hadn't thought about Michael once since the diagnosis. "Why?" I answered. "He's no longer a part of my life." "But you were married for many years," Catherine insisted. "Maybe he'd care to know you're unwell." I shook my head. "Catherine, that man showed me very clearly that he doesn't care about me when he left with another woman. I'm not going to give him the satisfaction of seeing me weak and sick." The truth is, it hadn't even occurred to me to contact Michael. My life was full of people who truly loved me. My friends, my sister, my business partner, my clients. I didn't need the false compassion of someone who had abandoned me when I was a healthy woman. If I was going to fight this battle, I was going to fight it with the people who truly valued me. On the 15th of March, I started chemotherapy at the oncology hospital. The first day was terrible. They gave me a cocktail of drugs that caused immediate nausea, dizziness, and a general feeling of being poisoned. "It's normal," the nurse told me. "Your body will get used to it little by little." The chemotherapy was scheduled for 9 months, 1 session every 3 weeks, for a total of 12 sessions. Each session lasted between 4 and 6 hours, connected to an IV drip that dripped slowly while I tried to read, sleep, or talk with other patients who were in the same situation. I met many brave people in that chemotherapy room. There was Mr. Arthur, a 70-year-old man with prostate cancer who always told jokes to make everyone laugh. Ashley, a 35-year-old woman with breast cancer who had 3 young children, and Ryan, a young man of only 20 with leukemia who was studying medicine through correspondence. We all supported each other, shared tips for dealing with side effects, and celebrated every small advance in our treatments. "We are warriors, Mr. Arthur would say. "Cancer picked the wrong people to mess with. We're going to win this battle." The side effects of chemo were brutal. I lost all my hair in 3 weeks, including my eyebrows and eyelashes. I lost 30 pounds and was skin and bones. I had constant nausea, sores in my mouth, and a fatigue so profound that sometimes I couldn't even lift my head off the pillow. Melanie took me to buy a nice wig, brown like my natural hair had been. "You look very elegant," she said when I tried it on. "You look like a bank executive," but I preferred to wear colorful scarves that gave me a bohemian and artistic air I had never had. Robert kept the office running throughout my treatment, but he came to my house twice a week so I could review the most complicated cases from my bed. "The business is yours too," he would say. "I'm not going to let it go under while you fight for your life." By May, after 2 months of chemotherapy, I started to feel a little better. The nausea was less intense, I had more energy, and the blood tests showed that my body was responding well to the treatment. "The tumor markers are going down," the oncologist told me. "That means the treatment is working." In June, I had a full checkup with CT scans and exhaustive analyses. The results were encouraging. "There are no signs of cancer anywhere in your body. You're in complete remission," the doctor explained. "We're going to finish the chemotherapy as planned, but everything indicates that the treatment has been successful." Those words were like music to my ears. After 3 months of battle, I finally had positive news. That night I called all the important people in my life to give them the good news. Catherine cried with joy on the phone. My friends organized a small celebration in my apartment, and Robert brought champagne to toast my recovery. "You did it, Kira," Melanie said that night. "You beat cancer like a true champion." But I knew the battle hadn't been mine alone. It had been fought by the entire support network that had sustained me during the most difficult times. My sister, my friends, my partner, even the other chemo patients who had shared their strength with me. In December 1999, I officially finished my chemotherapy treatment. The last session was emotional because I said goodbye to all the fellow warriors I had met in the hospital. Some had had results as good as mine, others were still fighting, and sadly, some had lost the battle. Mr. Arthur, my joke-telling companion, had had a relapse and was starting a more aggressive treatment. "You've already won, my dear," he told me on the last day I saw him. "Now live for those of us who couldn't make it." His words were etched in my heart forever. The day I left the hospital after my last chemo session, I felt like I was being born again. I was 46 years old, I had survived cancer, and I had a whole life ahead of me to do whatever I wanted. My hair had started to grow back, I had a good appetite, and I felt stronger every day. But there was something different about me. Cancer had taught me how fragile life is, how important the people who truly love us are, and how precious every day we have in this world is. I was no longer going to waste time on resentments, fears, or things that weren't worth it. The recovery after cancer was like learning to live again. During the first few months, I got tired very easily. I had to eat small portions because my stomach was smaller after the surgery, and every ache or pain scared me, thinking the cancer had returned. But little by little, my physical strength and confidence came back. By January 2000, a year after the diagnosis, I was able to work part-time at the office. Robert had managed everything perfectly during my absence, and the clients welcomed me with great affection when I returned. "Mrs. Murphy," said Mr. Fernando, the owner of a hardware store who was one of our oldest clients, "It's so good to see you back. It's not the same when you're not here." Those comments made me feel valued and needed, not just as an accountant, but as a person. My apartment had become a refuge full of plants, books, and photographs of all the important moments of my new life. I had photos of my friends, my trips, my graduation from the accounting course, the inauguration of the firm. It was the visual history of a woman who had built her own happiness. In March 2000, exactly 1 year after my surgery, I had all the follow-up tests. The CT scans, blood tests, and medical checkups showed that I was still in complete remission. 1 year without cancer, the oncologist said. That's an excellent sign. Every year that passes without a relapse, your chances of a cure increase. To celebrate that first anniversary of survival, my friends organized a party at my apartment. They invited all my clients, Robert and Catherine, who came especially from Ohio, and even some of my chemo buddies who had also pulled through. "A toast to Kira," Melanie said, raising her glass. "The bravest woman we know, who beat cancer and taught us all what it means to be strong." That night I felt surrounded by genuine love, the kind of love you only find when you have gone through the hardest trials of life. During 2000 and 2001, my life stabilized into a new and satisfying routine. I worked at the office 4 days a week, dedicated 1 day to my medical checkups and personal matters, and used the weekends to rest, see my friends, and do things that gave me pleasure. I started taking cooking classes on Saturdays at a culinary school in Midtown. I had always liked to cook, but now that I had to be very careful with my diet because of the operated stomach, I wanted to learn how to prepare delicious and nutritious meals. Besides, it was a relaxing activity that disconnected me from work. I also rediscovered my love for reading. During my marriage to Michael, I was always too busy or too stressed to read for pleasure. Now I devoured novels, biographies, self-help books, and even poetry. The Borders bookstore in Grosse Pointe became one of my favorite places to spend Sunday afternoons. In 2001, when I reached 2 years in remission, I decided to do something I had been putting off: travel alone. I had never traveled far on my own and wanted to celebrate my recovery. I chose the Florida Keys. That week-long trip to Key West was a transformative experience. It was the first time I made completely free decisions about what to do, where to go, what to eat, without having to consult anyone or worry about anyone but myself. I felt like an explorer discovering the world. On the beach, as I watched the sunset over the ocean, I thought about the entire journey I had taken from my divorce to that moment. From being a dependent woman with no self-esteem, I had become an independent traveler, a successful businesswoman, a cancer survivor, a person complete in herself. When I returned from the Florida Keys, Robert noticed I was different. "You look very relaxed," he said, "as if you found something you were looking for." And he was right. I had found confirmation that I could be completely happy just being myself without needing the validation or company of any man. By 2004, 5 years after the diagnosis, I was officially discharged from medical care. "You are cured?" the oncologist told me with a smile. "You just need routine annual checkups, like anyone your age." That afternoon I called all the important people in my life to share the news. "You did it!" Melanie shouted over the phone. 5 years, Kira. You officially beat cancer." That night, we organized a celebration party that lasted late into the night with all my friends, clients, and even some doctors and nurses from the hospital who had been part of my healing process. During those years, from 1999 to 2004, I had not heard from Michael even once. It was as if he had completely disappeared from my world, and I from his. Occasionally I thought of him when I saw a man his age on the street, but they were neutral thoughts, without pain or resentment. My life was so full of positive things that the painful past had truly been left in the past. By 2005, when I was 52, I felt I was in the prime of my life. I was a mature, successful, independent woman, completely satisfied with the decisions I had made. I didn't miss marriage. I didn't feel incomplete without a man, and I had no pending resentment with anyone. "You are an example for all of us," Rose told me one Sunday over breakfast. "You taught us that a woman can be completely happy without depending on anyone else." Her words filled me with pride because it was exactly what I had wanted to prove, first to myself and then to the world. The following years, from 2005 to 2011, were of consolidation and personal growth. I traveled all over the United States and several other countries, always alone or with my friends. I took courses in art, languages, advanced computing. I read hundreds of books, met many interesting people, and lived each day as a gift that life had given me after surviving cancer. In 2011, when I was 58 and had been a survivor for 12 years, I received a call I never expected. It was Lisa, Michael's sister, with whom I hadn't spoken since my divorce in 1986. Her voice sounded shaky and worried. "Kira," she said after identifying herself, "I know I have no right to bother you after so many years, but I need to talk to you about my brother. He is very sick and has no one who can help him." Her words brought back memories I thought I had forgotten forever. Lisa's call took me completely by surprise. 25 years had passed since my divorce from Michael. My life was in such a different place that hearing his name caused a strange sensation, like when you find a very old photo and have a hard time recognizing the person you once were. "What kind of illness does he have?" I asked Lisa, more out of courtesy than real interest. "Very advanced diabetes," she replied. "It got complicated with kidney failure, and now he needs dialysis 3 times a week. The doctors say his kidneys are very damaged." She told me that Michael had been sick for several years but had hidden his condition until it became impossible to ignore. "You know how proud he is," Lisa said. "He didn't want to accept that he was sick. He kept working and living as if nothing was wrong until he collapsed on the street and had to be taken to the hospital in an ambulance." "And Jennifer?" I asked, referring to the woman he had left me for. Lisa sighed deeply before answering. "Jennifer left him as soon as she found out he was going to be an invalid. She packed up the kids and went to live with another man. She says she didn't get married to be someone's nurse." The irony of the situation did not escape me. The same man who had abandoned me for my infertility, who had said he couldn't deal with a sick wife, had now been abandoned for the same reason. It was as if life had decided to teach him a very hard lesson about compassion and loyalty. "Why are you telling me this, Lisa?" I asked directly. "Michael is no longer my responsibility. He stopped being so 25 years ago when he decided to leave with another woman." My voice sounded colder than I intended, but it was the truth. I owed nothing to the man who had caused me so much pain. "Because he has no one else," Lisa said through sobs. "His children with Jennifer are adults now, but have their own lives and problems. I'm too old to take care of a sick person. And our other siblings live far away. You are the only person who knew Michael when he was young, who knows what he was really like." "Do you know what he did to me when I was sick?" I asked, feeling the anger from years past begin to resurface. "He abandoned me in the hospital when I had cancer. He told me that sick people depressed him. And now that he is sick, you expect me to help him?" Lisa was silent for a moment. She obviously knew the story but had hoped that time had softened my resentment. "I know you have no obligation," she said finally. "But I thought maybe, I don't know, maybe you could at least visit him. He's very depressed, very lonely. He talks a lot about you. He says he regrets everything that happened." "He should have regretted it 25 years ago," I replied. "He should have regretted it when he left me alone and sick. Not now that he needs help." But as I spoke, a part of me was curious to see what had become of the man who was once my husband. "Where is he admitted?" I asked, surprising myself. "At the University of Michigan Hospital in Ann Arbor," Lisa replied immediately, as if she had been waiting for that question. "Room 412, 4th floor. But Kira, be prepared because he's changed a lot. The illness has taken a heavy toll on him." I hung up the phone without committing to anything, but with my mind full of contradictory thoughts. On one hand, I felt that Michael deserved exactly what was happening to him. It was poetic justice that the man who had abandoned his sick wife was now being abandoned for the same reason. But on the other hand, my conscience told me that I was not like him. During my recovery from cancer, I had learned about compassion, about the importance of human relationships, about the value of being there for people who need it. Could I really let a human being suffer alone, no matter what he had done to me? That night I couldn't sleep, thinking about the conversation with Lisa. I got up several times to walk around my apartment, looking at the photos of my new life, trying to decide what kind of person I wanted to be in this situation. The resentful woman who held grudges, or the compassionate woman who had learned to forgive. At 3 a.m, while making myself a chamomile tea to see if I could sleep, I made a decision. I was going to see Michael. Not for him, but for me. To completely close that chapter of my life. To be able to look him in the eye and tell him everything I had been holding in for 25 years. I called Melanie the next day to tell her about the situation and my decision to visit Michael. "Are you sure you want to do that?" she asked. "Don't you think it's better to leave the past in the past?" Her questions were valid, but I felt I needed to face this situation to be at peace with myself. "I'm not going to help him," I clarified. "I'm just going to see him once, tell him what I think of what he did to me, and then I'm going to forget about him forever." Melanie didn't seem very convinced, but she supported me. "If that's what you need to do to close the circle, do it, but be careful not to let him manipulate you." That Friday afternoon, after finishing my work at the office, I dressed carefully to go to the hospital. I put on one of my most elegant suits, did my makeup well, and made sure I looked prosperous and successful. I wanted Michael to see clearly everything he had lost when he abandoned me. The University of Michigan Hospital brought back memories of my own hospital days during my cancer treatment, the hallways smelling of disinfectant, the worried families waiting for news, the doctors rushing by in their white coats, but this time, I was the visitor, not the patient. I found room 412 without difficulty. I knocked on the door softly and heard a weak voice say, "Come in." I took a deep breath, mentally prepared myself for what I was about to see, and entered the room that would change everything I thought about revenge, forgiveness, and justice. What I saw when I entered room 412 shocked me more than I expected. The man in that hospital bed looked nothing like the Michael I had known. He had aged terribly. He was very thin, with the yellowish skin typical of kidney problems, and he looked so fragile it seemed he could break like glass. Michael was 62 years old, but he looked like he was 80. He had completely white and very thin hair, deep wrinkles all over his face, and was connected to several machines that monitored his vital signs. His hands, which were once strong from his work as a driver, now looked like wrinkled paper. When he saw me enter, his eyes widened, and they immediately filled with tears. "Kira," he whispered in a voice I barely recognized. "I can't believe you came." He sat up a little in bed, as if trying to look more presentable, but the effort left him breathless. "Lisa told me you were sick," I said, keeping my distance, standing near the door. I didn't want to get too close because I didn't trust my own emotions. Seeing someone who was once important to me in such a condition stirred up complicated feelings I preferred to keep under control. "I'm finished," he said, and began to cry like a child. "My kidneys don't work anymore. I have to come for dialysis 3 times a week. And the doctors say, I'll be like this for the rest of my life. I don't know how much time I have left, but it's going to be very short and very painful." His crying was genuine, desperate, and it reminded me of the cries of the cancer patients I had met in my chemotherapy days. It was the cry of someone facing their own mortality and realizing how small and helpless they were before the disease. "Jennifer left," he continued between sobs. "As soon as she found out I was going to be an invalid, she packed up the kids and took off, said she didn't get married to be someone's nurse." Hearing those words, I felt a strange mixture of satisfaction and sadness. Satisfaction because he had received the same treatment he gave me, and sadness because I knew exactly how it felt to be abandoned when you need support the most. "And why are you telling me this?" I asked, although I knew perfectly well where the conversation was going. "Do you expect me to feel sorry for you?" My voice sounded harsher than I intended, but 25 years of accumulated pain could not be easily softened. "I know I have no right to ask you for anything," he said, wiping his tears with a trembling hand. "I know I was a coward with you, that I abandoned you when you needed me most. But I have no one else, Kira. My children are grown but have their own lives. My family is far away or too old, and I don't want to die alone like a dog." His words reached me, not because I felt sorry for him, but because I realized I held the power to decide his fate. For the first time in our entire relationship, I was the one in control. After 25 years, Kira finally holds the power. But what will she do with it? Let's see. He was completely at my mercy, needing my help to survive. "Do you remember what you told me when I had cancer?" I asked, looking him directly in the eyes. "You told me that sick people depressed you, that you couldn't deal with a sick wife. Do you remember that you abandoned me in the hospital and never came back to see how I was?" His face fell completely. "Yes, I remember," he whispered. "And I have regretted it every day since. I was a coward, Kira. I was the worst husband that could exist. But please, don't let me die alone. I'm begging you." Seeing him beg caused contradictory feelings in me. On one hand, a part of me enjoyed seeing him humiliated, begging for my help after everything he had done to me. But on the other hand, seeing him so vulnerable and desperate reminded me of my own moments of terror during cancer. "Do you know what it feels like to be sick and abandoned?" I asked. "Do you know what it's like to wake up in a hospital not knowing if you're going to live or die, and that the person who promised to love you in sickness and in health has simply disappeared?" My voice broke a little as I remembered those painful moments. "Now I know," he answered. "Now I understand what I did to you, and I hate myself for it, Kira. I hate myself for being so selfish, so cowardly. If I could go back in time, I would do everything differently. I would take care of you as you deserved. I would be by your side until you were cured." "But you can't go back in time," I said. "What's done is done, and you have to live with the consequences of your decisions." I headed for the door, feeling that I had said what I needed to say. This visit had been for me, to close the circle, not to comfort him. "Wait!" he shouted from the bed, his voice breaking. "Are you coming back?" I stopped in the doorway without turning to look at him. "I don't know, Michael. I'm going to think about it very carefully, just like you thought very carefully when you decided to abandon me." I left the hospital with very confused feelings. Seeing Michael so broken had given me the satisfaction of knowing he had paid for what he did to me, but it had also awakened painful memories of my own experience with illness. It wasn't the clean catharsis I had hoped for, but something much more complicated that would take me time to process. For the next 2 weeks, I couldn't stop thinking about the conversation with Michael. I had managed to tell him what I thought about his abandonment. I had seen with my own eyes how life had given him a taste of his own medicine, but instead of feeling completely satisfied, I felt restless, as if there was something pending to resolve. I discussed the matter extensively with my friends during our Sunday breakfasts. Melanie still thought it was best to leave it there, that I had had my moment of confrontation and that now I should move on with my life. That man has already received his punishment, she would say. Life took care of giving him what he deserved. Rose had a different perspective. Kira, for all the time we've known you, you've always been a compassionate woman. If you let him die alone, you'll carry that guilt for the rest of your life, no matter what he did to you. Her words made me reflect on what kind of person I really wanted to be. Hope, who was always the most practical of the group, suggested an alternative. Why don't you help him, but on your own terms? You're in control now. You can decide exactly how and how far to help him. That idea intrigued me because it allowed me to have power over the situation instead of being a victim of circumstances. During those 2 weeks of reflection, I began to develop a plan that would give me the satisfaction I was looking for without turning me into a cruel person. I was not going to abandon Michael as he had abandoned me, because I was not like him, but I was also not going to be the self-sacrificing and submissive wife I had been during our marriage. One afternoon, while reviewing some financial statements in my office, the perfect idea occurred to me. That's when my plan crystallized into something so beautifully twisted it took my own breath away. I would become his caregiver, yes, but not out of kindness. I would give him exactly what he gave me: conditional love, daily humiliation, and the constant reminder of his own inadequacy. Except unlike him, I wouldn't abandon my patient. I would stay, and I would let him live with the full weight of understanding what kind of man he had been. It was going to be the most exquisite, drawn-out lesson in karma the universe had ever designed. I called Lisa to tell her I had made a decision. "I'm going to help Michael," I said, hearing her sigh of relief on the other end of the phone. "But it will be on my terms, in my house, and following my rules. If he agrees, he can come live with me when he's discharged." Now I know some of you are thinking I lost my mind, taking in the man who destroyed me. But here's what I learned about power, my dears. True power isn't about making someone suffer. It's about having the strength to choose mercy when you could choose cruelty. I wasn't saving Michael that day. I was saving myself from becoming the kind of person who lets hate poison her soul. "Really?" Lisa asked, as if she couldn't believe what she was hearing. "After everything that happened, you're going to take care of him?" Her question made me reflect on my true motivations. It wasn't charity I was going to do, nor simple revenge. It was something more complex: justice with compassion. "I'm not going to take care of him for his sake," I clarified. "I'm going to take care of him for my own, so I can live in peace with myself. But he will have to accept my conditions, and they won't be easy." I briefly explained that Michael would live as my dependent, following my rules and remembering every day why he was in that situation. That same afternoon, I returned to the University of Michigan hospital. Michael looked a little better than the last time, as if the hope of not dying alone had given him some energy. When he saw me enter, his eyes lit up with a mixture of relief and gratitude that I found satisfying. "I came to make a deal with you," I said bluntly, sitting in the chair next to his bed. "I will take care of you when you get out of the hospital. You will come to live in my house. I will take you to your dialysis, I will feed you, and I will take care of all your medical needs." His face completely transformed. For a moment, it seemed like he was going to start crying again, but this time from relief. "Kira, I can't believe that after everything I did to you." His words broke with emotion. "Wait," I interrupted before he could start thanking me. "You haven't heard the conditions yet. You will live in my house, but under my rules. You will sleep in the spare room, not in my bedroom. You will eat what I decide to give you, when I decide to give it to you. You will not have visitors without my permission. His expression changed to one of confusion and concern. "What do you mean?" he asked. "I mean you're going to live exactly as I lived during our marriage, completely dependent on the goodwill of another person. The difference is that I will actually be there to take care of you. But there's one more condition, more important than all the others," I continued, watching his face grow more serious. "Every morning and every night, you will thank me for taking care of you, and you will ask for my forgiveness for abandoning me when I was sick. Every single day, without exception." The humiliation on his face was evident, but I could also see that he understood he had no other choice. "That's fair," he said after a long moment. "I deserve that, and much more for what I did to you. I accept all your conditions, Kira. Just please, don't let me die alone." "Perfect," I said, standing up. "I'll talk to the doctors to see when you'll be discharged, and I'll prepare everything at my house. But let's be very clear. This isn't charity I'm doing for you. It's justice. You're going to experience exactly what you put me through, but with the difference that I will actually be there." I left the hospital that afternoon feeling powerful like never before in my life. For the first time, I was going to have absolute control over Michael. He would depend on me for everything: food, shelter, transportation, medical care, even his dignity. It was the perfect reversal of the power dynamic we had during our marriage. The next few days, I dedicated myself to meticulously preparing my apartment to receive Michael. I set up the spare room with a single bed, a small dresser, and a basic nightstand. It wasn't luxurious, but it was dignified. I also prepared a detailed schedule for his medications, dialysis, and meals. I bought a weekly pill organizer and carefully noted down all the medications he had to take, at what times, and in what doses. I made a chart of the special diet he had to follow for his kidneys and planned weekly menus that were nutritious but strict, according to medical instructions. I also established clear rules for living together. Michael had to ask my permission to use the phone, to watch television, for any activity outside of his basic needs. Meal times were to be strict. Breakfast at 8 a.m., lunch at 2 p.m., dinner at 7 p.m., no snacks between meals. Melanie came to help me with the preparations, although she still thought it was a risky idea. "Kira, are you sure you want to do this? You're going to have that man in your house every day. Don't you think it will be emotionally draining?" Her concerns were valid, but I was determined. "For the first time in my life, I'm going to have total control over my relationship with Michael," I explained. During our marriage, he made all the decisions, and I had to obey. Now the tables have turned. He's going to live by my rules and learn what it means to depend completely on someone else. The hospital doctor called me on Wednesday to tell me that Michael would be discharged on Friday. "His condition is stable," he explained, "but he will need constant care. Dialysis is on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, from 6 to 10 a.m. at the University of Michigan Hospital. He also has to take several daily medications and follow a very strict diet." "I understand perfectly," I replied. "I will take care of all of that." I gave him my details as an emergency contact, and we agreed that Michael would have follow-up appointments every 2 weeks with the nephrologist. The Thursday night before Michael arrived at my house, I couldn't sleep. It wasn't nerves or regret, but a strange mixture of anticipation and satisfaction. After 25 years, I was finally going to have the opportunity for Michael to experience what it was like to depend completely on the compassion of another person. On Friday at 2 p.m., I went to the hospital to pick up Michael. I arrived driving my car, elegantly dressed, projecting the image of a successful and independent woman. I wanted it to be very clear from the first moment who was in control in this new dynamic. Michael was waiting for me, sitting in a wheelchair with a small suitcase containing all his belongings. He looked nervous, but also relieved to finally be leaving the hospital. When he saw me, he tried to stand up, but the nurses told him he had to leave in the wheelchair until the door. "Ready for your new life?" I asked, with a smile that was more triumphant than compassionate. He nodded silently, understanding that this was going to be a very different chapter from what he had known before. He was no longer the man who made decisions and controlled situations. Now he was a patient dependent on my goodwill. The journey from the hospital to my apartment was silent but loaded with symbolism. I drove my own car, making decisions about the route and speed, while Michael was a quiet passenger, looking out the window at a city that had changed a lot during his weeks of hospitalization. When we arrived at my building, Michael was surprised to see how elegant it was. "You live here?" he asked as I helped him out of the car. "Yes," I replied proudly. "It's my apartment that I bought with the money I earned from my own business after our divorce." The elevator ride to the 12th floor was another moment of awkward silence. Michael seemed to get smaller and more insecure, while I felt more powerful with each floor we ascended towards my territory, my space, my rules. When I opened the door to my apartment, Michael's expression was one of complete astonishment. My home was beautiful. Marble floors, elegant furniture, lush plants, an incredible view of the city from the living room. It was the tangible materialization of everything I had achieved by myself. "It's very beautiful," he murmured, looking at the paintings on the walls, the photographs of my travels, the framed professional awards. "Thank you," I replied. "But remember that this is my house. You are a guest here, not an owner." I quickly showed him the living room, the dining room, the kitchen, and my bedroom, which he obviously had no access to. And finally, we arrived at the spare room that was to be his space. It was small, but comfortable, with a single bed, a basic wardrobe, and a window that overlooked the building's inner courtyard. "This is your room?" I said, opening the door. "Here you will sleep, here you will keep your clothes, and here you will spend your time when you are not eating or doing some activity that I authorize." His face showed a mixture of gratitude and humiliation as he saw the small space I had assigned him. "We share the bathroom," I continued, "but you always have to let me know before you use it. Meal times are fixed. Breakfast at 8, lunch at 2, dinner at 7. No food outside of those times. Dialysis is Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and I will take you and bring you back." Michael nodded to everything like a scolded child. "Any questions?" I asked. "No," he replied in a broken voice. "Just thank you, Kira. I know I don't deserve your help, but I thank you for not letting me die alone in the hospital. Now, let's start with the first part of our agreement," I said, sitting in the only chair in the room while he sat on the edge of the bed. "Thank me for taking care of you, and ask my forgiveness for abandoning me when I was sick." His face turned red with shame, but after a long moment, he spoke in a trembling voice. "Thank you for taking care of me, Kira, and forgive me for abandoning you when you had cancer. I was a coward, and you didn't deserve that." "Very good," I said with satisfaction. "You will do this every morning after breakfast and every night after dinner, without exception, so you never forget why you are here and what kind of man you were to me." That first night, I prepared dinner at 7 o'clock sharp: boiled chicken, steamed vegetables, and plain water. It was a healthy but bland meal, appropriate for his renal diet, but without any luxury or special seasoning. I served it to him on a tray and took it to his room. "Dinner is eaten in your room," I said, placing the tray on his lap. "Really?" Lisa asked, as if she couldn't believe what she was hearing. "After everything that happened, you're going to take care of him?" Her question made me reflect on my true motivations. It wasn't charity I was going to do, nor simple revenge. It was something more complex: justice with compassion. "I'm not going to take care of him for his sake," I clarified. "I'm going to take care of him for my own, so I can live in peace with myself. But he will have to accept my conditions, and they won't be easy." I briefly explained that Michael would live as my dependent, following my rules and remembering every day why he was in that situation. That same afternoon, I returned to the University of Michigan hospital. Michael looked a little better than the last time, as if the hope of not dying alone had given him some energy. When he saw me enter, his eyes lit up with a mixture of relief and gratitude that I found satisfying. "I came to make a deal with you," I said bluntly, sitting in the chair next to his bed. "I will take care of you when you get out of the hospital. You will come to live in my house. I will take you to your dialysis, I will feed you, and I will take care of all your medical needs." His face completely transformed. For a moment, it seemed like he was going to start crying again, but this time from relief. "Kira, I can't believe that after everything I did to you. His words broke with emotion. "Wait," I interrupted before he could start thanking me. "You haven't heard the conditions yet. You will live in my house, but under my rules. You will sleep in the spare room, not in my bedroom. You will eat what I decide to give you, when I decide to give it to you. You will not have visitors without my permission." His expression changed to one of confusion and concern. "What do you mean?" he asked. "I mean you're going to live exactly as I lived during our marriage, completely dependent on the goodwill of another person. The difference is that I will actually be there to take care of you. But there's one more condition, more important than all the others," I continued, watching his face grow more serious. "Every morning and every night, you will thank me for taking care of you, and you will ask for my forgiveness for abandoning me when I was sick. Every single day, without exception." The humiliation on his face was evident, but I could also see that he understood he had no other choice. "That's fair," he said after a long moment. "I deserve that, and much more for what I did to you. I accept all your conditions, Kira. Just please, don't let me die alone." "Perfect," I said, standing up. "I'll talk to the doctors to see when you'll be discharged, and I'll prepare everything at my house. But let's be very clear. This isn't charity I'm doing for you. It's justice. You're going to experience exactly what you put me through, but with the difference that I will actually be there." I left the hospital that afternoon feeling powerful like never before in my life. For the first time, I was going to have absolute control over Michael. He would depend on me for everything: food, shelter, transportation, medical care, even his dignity. It was the perfect reversal of the power dynamic we had during our marriage. The next few days, I dedicated myself to meticulously preparing my apartment to receive Michael. I set up the spare room with a single bed, a small dresser, and a basic nightstand. It wasn't luxurious, but it was dignified. I also prepared a detailed schedule for his medications, dialysis, and meals. I bought a weekly pill organizer and carefully noted down all the medications he had to take, at what times, and in what doses. I made a chart of the special diet he had to follow for his kidneys and planned weekly menus that were nutritious but strict, according to medical instructions. I also established clear rules for living together. Michael had to ask my permission to use the phone, to watch television, for any activity outside of his basic needs. Meal times were to be strict. Breakfast at 8 a.m., lunch at 2 p.m., dinner at 7 p.m., no snacks between meals. Melanie came to help me with the preparations, although she still thought it was a risky idea. "Kira, are you sure you want to do this? You're going to have that man in your house every day. Don't you think it will be emotionally draining?" Her concerns were valid, but I was determined. "For the first time in my life, I'm going to have total control over my relationship with Michael," I explained. During our marriage, he made all the decisions, and I had to obey. Now the tables have turned. He's going to live by my rules and learn what it means to depend completely on someone else. The hospital doctor called me on Wednesday to tell me that Michael would be discharged on Friday. "His condition is stable," he explained, "but he will need constant care. Dialysis is on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, from 6 to 10 a.m. at the University of Michigan Hospital. He also has to take several daily medications and follow a very strict diet." "I understand perfectly," I replied. "I will take care of all of that." I gave him my details as an emergency contact, and we agreed that Michael would have follow-up appointments every 2 weeks with the nephrologist. The Thursday night before Michael arrived at my house, I couldn't sleep. It wasn't nerves or regret, but a strange mixture of anticipation and satisfaction. After 25 years, I was finally going to have the opportunity for Michael to experience what it was like to depend completely on the compassion of another person. On Friday at 2 p.m., I went to the hospital to pick up Michael. I arrived driving my car, elegantly dressed, projecting the image of a successful and independent woman. I wanted it to be very clear from the first moment who was in control in this new dynamic. Michael was waiting for me, sitting in a wheelchair with a small suitcase containing all his belongings. He looked nervous, but also relieved to finally be leaving the hospital. When he saw me, he tried to stand up, but the nurses told him he had to leave in the wheelchair until the door. Ready for your new life? I asked, with a smile that was more triumphant than compassionate. He nodded silently, understanding that this was going to be a very different chapter from what he had known before. He was no longer the man who made decisions and controlled situations. Now he was a patient dependent on my goodwill. The journey from the hospital to my apartment was silent but loaded with symbolism. I drove my own car, making decisions about the route and speed, while Michael was a quiet passenger, looking out the window at a city that had changed a lot during his weeks of hospitalization. When we arrived at my building, Michael was surprised to see how elegant it was. "You live here?" he asked as I helped him out of the car. "Yes," I replied proudly. "It's my apartment that I bought with the money I earned from my own business after our divorce." The elevator ride to the 12th floor was another moment of awkward silence. Michael seemed to get smaller and more insecure, while I felt more powerful with each floor we ascended towards my territory, my space, my rules. When I opened the door to my apartment, Michael's expression was one of complete astonishment. My home was beautiful. Marble floors, elegant furniture, lush plants, an incredible view of the city from the living room. It was the tangible materialization of everything I had achieved by myself. "It's very beautiful," he murmured, looking at the paintings on the walls, the photographs of my travels, the framed professional awards. "Thank you," I replied. "But remember that this is my house. You are a guest here, not an owner." I quickly showed him the living room, the dining room, the kitchen, and my bedroom, which he obviously had no access to. And finally, we arrived at the spare room that was to be his space. It was small, but comfortable, with a single bed, a basic wardrobe, and a window that overlooked the building's inner courtyard. "This is your room?" I said, opening the door. "Here you will sleep, here you will keep your clothes, and here you will spend your time when you are not eating or doing some activity that I authorize." His face showed a mixture of gratitude and humiliation as he saw the small space I had assigned him. "We share the bathroom," I continued, "but you always have to let me know before you use it. Meal times are fixed. Breakfast at 8, lunch at 2, dinner at 7. No food outside of those times. Dialysis is Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and I will take you and bring you back." Michael nodded to everything like a scolded child. "Any questions?" I asked. "No," he replied in a broken voice. "Just thank you, Kira. I know I don't deserve your help, but I thank you for not letting me die alone in the hospital. Now, let's start with the first part of our agreement," I said, sitting in the only chair in the room while he sat on the edge of the bed. "Thank me for taking care of you, and ask my forgiveness for abandoning me when I was sick." His face turned red with shame, but after a long moment, he spoke in a trembling voice. "Thank you for taking care of me, Kira, and forgive me for abandoning you when you had cancer. I was a coward, and you didn't deserve that." "Very good," I said with satisfaction. "You will do this every morning after breakfast and every night after dinner, without exception, so you never forget why you are here and what kind of man you were to me." That first night, I prepared dinner at 7 o'clock sharp. Boiled chicken, steamed vegetables, and plain water. It was a healthy but bland meal, appropriate for his renal diet, but without any luxury or special seasoning. I served it to him on a tray and took it to his room. "Dinner is eaten in your room," I said, placing the tray on his lap. One night, after he finished his ritual of thanks and apologies, I stayed a little longer in his room. "Michael," I said, "do you really regret what you did to me? Or do you just say that because you depend on me?" He looked me in the eyes with a seriousness I hadn't seen before. "At first, I only said it because I had to," he confessed. "But these months have given me a lot of time to think. And now, the regret is real. I see everything you built after we divorced. I see the strong woman you became, and I realize that I lost the best person I ever met in my life." "And how should that make me feel?" I asked. "It shouldn't make you feel any particular way," he replied. "I just wanted you to know that my regret is genuine, even if it's useless now. I don't expect you to forgive me. I just hope that one day you can be at peace with me." That conversation left me thinking for days. When had the punishment been enough? How much longer was I going to continue this power dynamic? Was it really healing me? or was I turning into a female version of the cruel man he had been to me? By the 6th month of having Michael live with me, my perspective on the whole situation had begun to change. What started as a plan of poetic justice had turned into something more complex, a cohabitation where we had both learned important things about ourselves and about human relationships. During those months, Michael had shown a capacity for change that I didn't know he had. He was no longer the proud and selfish man who had abandoned me, but someone genuinely humble who seemed to value every small kindness I showed him. His daily thanks had evolved from forced rituals to sincere expressions of gratitude. But I had changed too. At first, exercising control over him gave me a deep satisfaction, the feeling of settling a long-standing debt. But little by little, that satisfaction had transformed into something different, a real responsibility towards another human being who depended completely on me. One morning in June, after taking him to his regular dialysis, I sat in the hospital waiting room and had a revelation. As I watched other families caring for their kidney patients, I realized that I had become Michael's primary caregiver, not out of revenge, but because I genuinely cared about his well-being. When I picked him up after the treatment, he looked particularly weak. That day's dialysis had been harder than usual, and he had to lean on my arm to walk to the car. "Are you okay?" I asked. And for the first time in months, my concern was genuine, not part of my role as an obligatory caregiver. "I'm just tired," he replied with a faint smile. "But thanks for asking. I know you have no obligation to worry about me beyond keeping me alive." His words made me reflect on how much our dynamic had changed without me even realizing it. That afternoon, instead of leaving him to rest alone in his room as usual, I sat by his bed while he recovered. "Michael," I said after a while, "how do you really feel living here? And I want you to answer me honestly." He propped himself up a bit in bed and looked at me with surprise. "Do you really want to know?" he asked. When I nodded, he took a deep breath before speaking. "At first, I felt humiliated, resentful of myself for having to depend on you after what I did to you. But now I feel at peace." "At peace?" His answer surprised me. "Yes," he continued. "For the first time in many years, I don't have to pretend to be someone I'm not. I don't have to prove to anyone that I'm a successful or independent man. I can just be who I really am. An old, sick man who made terrible mistakes and is grateful for the compassion of someone who had every right to hate him." His words moved me more than I expected. "And you don't feel resentful about having to thank me and ask for my forgiveness every day?" I asked. "No," he replied without hesitation. "I feel grateful to have the opportunity to remind you daily how sorry I am. It's the least I can do." That conversation marked a turning point in our relationship. For the first time since he had come to my house, Michael had spoken to me as an equal, as a real person with complex feelings, not just as my humiliated dependent. During the following weeks, our conversations became deeper and more honest. Michael told me details of his life with Jennifer that I had never known, and I told him about my cancer recovery process and how I had built my independence. It was as if we were truly getting to know each other for the first time. "Do you know what hurts me most about everything that happened?" he said one night as we had dinner together. I had started to join him for meals instead of letting him eat alone. "What?" I asked. "That I lost the opportunity to know the extraordinary woman you became. During our marriage, I only saw what I was missing, not what I had." "And what did you have?" His answer made me stop my fork mid-air. "I had an intelligent, hard-working, loyal woman who loved me unconditionally. I had someone who would have faced any difficulty by my side if I had been mature enough to value her. But I was a coward who only knew how to run away when things got tough." By the 7th month, something fundamental had changed between us. Michael still lived in the spare room and was still completely dependent on me. But our relationship was no longer based on punishment and humiliation, but on mutual respect and understanding. One morning, when it was time for his daily thanks and apology, I stopped him. "You don't have to do this anymore," I said. His face showed total confusion. "I don't?" he asked. I think we've both learned what we needed to learn." "Does that mean you forgive me?" he asked, his voice full of hope. I thought carefully before answering. It means I'm tired of carrying so much resentment. Sometimes forgiveness isn't because they deserve it, but because we deserve to be free from hatred. I don't know if I forgive you completely, but I do know that I want to be at peace with myself and with you. That day marked the beginning of a new stage in our cohabitation. Michael continued to live in my house and depend on me for his medical care, but now it was more like a life partner than a punished subordinate. We started making small decisions together: what to watch on television, what to cook for dinner, how to organize his medication. They weren't important decisions, but they represented a fundamental shift in our power dynamic. My friends noticed the change immediately. "You look more relaxed," Melanie commented during one of our Sunday breakfasts, "as if a weight has been lifted off your shoulders." And she was right. Letting go of the need to control and punish Michael had freed me from an emotional burden I hadn't realized I was carrying. In 2013, when Michael had been living with me for 2 years, we had to face a medical crisis that tested our new dynamic. His kidneys worsened significantly, and the doctors told us that he needed more frequent dialysis and possibly a transplant in the future. "I don't want to be more of a burden than I already am," he told me one night after receiving the medical news. "If this gets too complicated, promise me you'll take me to a nursing home. It's not fair for you to sacrifice your life for taking care of someone who did you so much harm." His concern for my well-being surprised me. "Michael," I said, taking his hands, "you stopped being a burden a long time ago. You are my life partner, and partners take care of each other in the good and the bad times." During that medical crisis, I realized how much I had come to value his presence in my life. It wasn't romantic love, nor was it just compassion. It was something different. The satisfaction of sharing life with someone who knew me completely, who respected my decisions, and who contributed to our home in ways that I valued. It was during this time that we received an unexpected visit that put things into perspective. Jessica, the daughter Michael had with Jennifer, appeared at my door one Saturday afternoon. She was 28 years old, a beautiful woman, and looked very nervous. "Are you Kira?" she asked when I opened the door. "I'm Jessica, Michael's daughter. Could I speak with him?" Her presence surprised me because Michael almost never talked about his children with Jennifer, although I knew he missed them very much. Michael was tremendously excited to see Jessica. He cried like a child as he hugged her, and she also cried. "Dad, we've been looking for you for years," she said. "Mom never wanted to give us your address, but I finally managed to locate you through hospital records." During that 3-hour visit, I learned many things that Michael had never told me. His children had been looking for him since they came of age, but Jennifer had lied, telling them that he wanted nothing to do with them. The truth was that Michael had tried to maintain contact, but Jennifer had prevented him. "We wanted you to know that we never stopped loving you," Jessica told her dad, "and we wanted to meet the lady who is taking care of you to thank her for everything she does for you." When she looked at me, her eyes were filled with genuine gratitude. "Kira not only takes care of me," Michael explained to Jessica, "she saved my life when no one else wanted to, and she has taught me to be a better person than I ever was." His words filled me with pride because they reflected the mutual respect we had built. From that visit on, Jessica and her brothers began to visit us regularly. At first, I felt uncomfortable because they were the children Michael had had with the woman he had left me for. But little by little, I realized that they were good people who genuinely loved their dad and appreciated what I did for him. But it was during one of these family visits that I discovered the medical secret that would change everything I thought I knew about our marriage. Michael Jr., now 27 and working as a nurse, was helping me organize his father's medications when he noticed something in his medical records. "Mrs. Murphy," he said, looking confused, "there's something strange in these old medical records." "What do you mean?" I asked. "These fertility tests from the 1970s. The results show that my father had very low sperm count and poor motility. According to these numbers, the probability of him fathering children naturally would have been extremely low." My heart stopped. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that according to these tests, it was highly unlikely that my father could have children with anyone. The problem wasn't just yours, Mrs. Murphy. It was his too, maybe even more so." My dears, there are moments in life when everything you believed about yourself crumbles in an instant. For 30 years I carried the shame of being the broken one. I built my entire identity around that wound. And in one moment, I discovered it had all been built on a lie. The man who called me defective had hidden his own defects behind my pain. That's not just betrayal, that's theft of the soul. The room spun around me. For over 30 years, I had carried the guilt of being the defective one in our marriage. 30 years carrying guilt that wasn't hers. This is the biggest twist in this story. How will Kira react? Michael had left me believing that I was the only one with fertility problems, that he could have children with any other woman. Are you sure about these results? I asked, my voice trembling. I'm sure. I see these tests all the time in my work. Your tests showed blocked fallopian tubes, which was a real problem, but his tests showed even more severe issues. The fact that he had children with Jennifer was, well, it was almost miraculous. That night, after Michael Jr. left, I sat with Michael at our kitchen table with the old medical records spread out between us. Did you know? I asked him directly. Did you know that your fertility was also compromised? Michael's face went completely pale. He stared at the papers for a long time before answering. The doctor mentioned something about low numbers, but he said it wasn't impossible. You knew, I said, not as a question but as a statement. You knew that the problem wasn't just mine, and you let me carry all the guilt and shame. Michael began to cry, but these weren't tears of self-pity. They were tears of genuine shame. I was so scared, he whispered. In those days, a man who couldn't have children was seen as less than a man. When the doctor said there might be issues on my side too, I couldn't face it. So you let me believe I was the only one broken. Yes, he admitted. And when Jennifer got pregnant, I thought it proved that the problem had been yours all along. I convinced myself that I was fine, that you were the only one with issues. But deep down, you knew the truth. Deep down, I knew that maybe we both had problems. But it was easier to blame you than to face the possibility that I was defective too. I stared at this man I had lived with for over 2 years, this man I had begun to care for, this man I thought I had finally understood. Do you realize what this means? I asked. It means I'm even more of a coward than I thought, he replied. It means I destroyed our marriage not just because I couldn't handle having a sick wife, but because I was too scared to face my own inadequacies. The revelation reframed everything. Our entire marriage, our divorce, his affair with Jennifer, my years of self-blaming, all of it had been built on a lie. Not a deliberate lie, perhaps, but a lie of omission, a lie of cowardice. All these years, I said, I believed I was the broken one. I built my entire identity around being the woman who couldn't give her husband children. And I let you, Michael said, his voice filled with self-loathing. Because it was easier than admitting that I might be broken too. That night marked another transformation in our relationship. The medical revelation didn't erase what Michael had done to me, but it added another layer of understanding to his betrayal. He hadn't just abandoned me when I was sick. He had built our entire marriage on a foundation of denial and cowardice about his own shortcomings. The revelation made me angry in ways I hadn't expected. Just when I thought I had found peace with our past, this new information opened up old wounds. But it also explained so much about Michael's behavior during our marriage, his defensiveness, his increasing distance, his eventual affair. You know what the cruelest part is? I told him one evening as we sat in the living room. I spent 15 years building my independence, proving that I was more than just a failed wife. But I never stopped carrying the shame of being the infertile one. Even in my success, I carried that identity. Michael was silent for a long time before responding. I gave you a burden that was never entirely yours to carry. I'm sorry doesn't even begin to cover it. But as angry as the revelation made me, it also brought a strange kind of closure. For the first time in my life, I understood that my worth had never been tied to my ability to have children. That shame I had carried for so long had been based on incomplete information. Do you know what I realized? I told Michael one morning as we prepared breakfast together. This information doesn't change what happened, but it changes how I understand what happened. You weren't just a man who couldn't handle a sick wife. You were a man who was so terrified of his own inadequacies that he destroyed everything good in his life to avoid facing them. That's exactly what I was, he replied, and it cost me everything. It cost me you, it cost me the chance at a real marriage, it cost me decades of happiness. The following months were a period of processing this new understanding, but for me it was liberating. I was finally free from the last vestige of shame about our marriage. I wasn't the broken woman who couldn't give her husband children. I was half of a couple who both had fertility challenges, but only one of us had been brave enough to face medical testing honestly. The years from 2014 to 2020 were a period of quiet contentment. We had found a rhythm that worked for both of us. Michael's health remained stable with regular dialysis, and I continued to run my accounting business, though at a more relaxed pace. In 2015, when Michael had been living with me for 4 years, we decided to do something we had never done during our marriage: travel together. His health was stable, and I wanted to show him some of the places I had visited during my years of independence. We went to Traverse City, the same place where we had spent our honeymoon 40 years before, but this time we were completely different people. He, a humble and grateful man who had finally faced his own cowardices. I, an independent woman at peace with herself and her choices. "Do you remember when we came here when we were young?" he asked, as we sat on a bench in the park. "I remember," I replied, "but I feel like I'm remembering someone else's life. We are no longer those people." "Do you regret anything?" he asked. "I regret the time we lost being unhappy," I replied, "but I don't regret anything that has happened in the last few years." In 2020, when the pandemic arrived, Michael and I were locked down together for months. At first, I thought it would be very difficult, but it turned out to be a very valuable period for our relationship. During those months of confinement, Michael told me stories of his childhood that he had never shared, and I told him about my deepest dreams and fears. "Do you know what I like most about our life now?" he asked one afternoon while we were cooking together. "What?" I replied. "That we can be completely honest with each other. We no longer have to pretend to be perfect or hide our weaknesses. My beautiful souls, after all the pain, all the betrayal, all the years of building walls around my heart, I discovered the most radical thing. Authentic love isn't about finding someone who thinks you're perfect. It's about finding someone who sees your scars and chooses to stay anyway. That's not just love, that's liberation." In 2021, Michael had another serious medical episode that required hospitalization for 2 weeks. During that time, I realized how much he had become an integral part of my daily life. My apartment felt strangely empty without him, and I found myself missing our nightly conversations and his help in the kitchen. When he finally returned home, we both understood that our relationship had evolved into something very special. We were not spouses, we were not ordinary friends, we were not just caregiver and patient. We were two people who had learned to accompany each other in old age with dignity, respect, and genuine affection. By 2022, our daily routine had perfected into a silent dance of mutual care. I was in charge of his medical needs, and he was in charge of keeping our home running. We worked together in my accounting business, we cooked together, we watched television together, but we also respected each other's personal space. "I think you have achieved something very rare," Rose commented during one of our breakfasts. "What?" I asked. "You have managed to build a completely new relationship on the ruins of the previous one. That requires a lot of maturity and a lot of capacity for forgiveness." In 2023, when Michael had been living with me for 12 years, we celebrated discreetly with a special dinner. "These have been the best years of my life," he said that night. "Why?" I asked. "Because for the first time in my life I'm authentic," he replied. "I don't have to pretend to be stronger or more successful than I am. I can be vulnerable, I can need help, and I can be grateful without shame. And you allow me to be that." His words made me reflect on my own process. Taking care of Michael had taught me about compassion, about the healing power of forgiveness, and about the possibility of building something beautiful, even on painful foundations. It hadn't been the revenge I planned, but something much more valuable: the opportunity to heal and grow. In January 2024, Michael had a very serious renal crisis that scared us both. The doctors told us that his kidneys were failing faster than expected and that he would probably need more intensive care in the near future. "Kira," he said one night after returning from the hospital, "I want you to know that if the time comes when taking care of me becomes too difficult, I will go to a palliative care hospital. I don't want you to sacrifice your quality of life to keep an old, sick man alive." "Don't say those things," I replied, surprising myself with the intensity of my emotional reaction. "As long as I can take care of you, you're going to stay here. This is your home as much as mine." I realized at that moment that at some point along the way, Michael had ceased to be my project of justice to become my chosen family. Now, in 2025, as I tell you this story, Michael is still living with me. He is 76 years old, I am 72. And our relationship continues to evolve. It is not perfect. It is not what either of us would have imagined when we were young, but it is authentic, it is respectful, and it gives us both peace. Today, as I sit in my Detroit apartment watching Michael arrange his medications with trembling hands, I realize that forgiveness is not a destination, it's a daily choice. This is my true story, and the truth is, there are days when I still feel the familiar pain of betrayal. But I've learned that my peace doesn't come from erasing the past. It comes from choosing who I want to be in the present. The woman who plotted her revenge has become someone I barely recognize, not weaker, but wiser. I didn't forgive Michael to free him from guilt. I forgave him to free myself from the prison of endless anger. The scars remain, but they no longer define me. The revelation about his fertility issues was the final piece of a puzzle I'd been trying to solve for decades. It didn't excuse his behavior, but it explained it. Michael wasn't just a cruel man who abandoned his sick wife. He was a deeply frightened man who spent his entire life running from his own inadequacies. In caring for him these past 14 years, I've learned that healing isn't about forgetting what happened. It's about choosing what story you want your life to tell going forward. I could have let his abandonment be the defining moment of my life, the wound that never healed. Instead, I chose to let my response to that abandonment be my defining moment. When people ask me why I took in the man who abandoned me, I tell them the truth. I didn't do it for him. I did it for me. Because I discovered that the ultimate revenge isn't about making someone else suffer, it's about becoming so magnificently yourself that their loss becomes legendary. My beautiful souls, listen to me carefully. I am not telling you to forgive every man who breaks you. I'm telling you something far more powerful: that you have the absolute right to rewrite your own story, on your own terms. At 46, cancer-stricken and abandoned, I thought I was reading my final chapter. I was wrong. I was about to write my masterpiece. The greatest revenge isn't destruction, it's becoming so magnificently yourself that their loss becomes legendary. Your scars are not your shame, they're your credentials. And your healing? That's your rebellion against everyone who counted you out. Michael and I have both learned that love isn't just what happens between two people when everything is easy. Sometimes, love is what happens when two broken people decide to stop breaking each other and start healing together instead. In Detroit, where this journey began, I discovered that the ultimate victory isn't about making someone else pay, it's about reclaiming your own power to love, to choose, to live fully despite your wounds. If you're still with me after this journey, drop a comment below and tell me, what's the most unexpected way life taught you about strength? Hit that subscribe button if you believe in second chances, and share this story with anyone who needs to remember that their worth was never determined by someone else's ability to see it. Because somewhere tonight, there's a woman crying in a hospital bed, convinced her story is over. Let's make sure she finds this message. Your story isn't over, sister. It's just beginning. The broken road led me home to myself, and it can lead you home too. This is my truth from Detroit, and I'm grateful you listened to every word. Thank you for being here with me through this journey of pain, revenge, and ultimately redemption. May you find your own path to healing, whatever form it takes. Today, as I sit in my Detroit apartment, watching Michael arrange his medications with trembling hands, I realize that forgiveness is not a destination, it's a daily choice. This is my true story, and the truth is, there are days when I still feel the familiar pain of betrayal. But I've learned that my peace doesn't come from erasing the past. It comes from choosing who I want to be in the present. The woman who plotted her revenge has become someone I barely recognize, not weaker, but wiser. I didn't forgive Michael to free him from guilt. I forgave him to free myself from the prison of endless anger. The scars remain, but they no longer define me. In Detroit, where this journey began, I discovered that the ultimate victory is not about making someone pay, it's about reclaiming your own power to love, to choose, to live fully despite your wounds. If my story touches your heart, please subscribe and share it with those who need to hear that healing is possible, even in the most difficult of circumstances.